launching into the end zone. Aaron Donald almost beat the football there and comes away with his third sack of the afternoon. Met immediately and sacked. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day. And he gets gobbled up. Savage has to eat it as Michael Brockers picks up the sack. He's decked by Ebukam.
Picked off. Marcus Peters strutting his stuff.
Mark Barron the last 4 weeks has been a Pro Bowler.
Oh, it's picked off on the play by John Johnson.
Hector to throw. And we mentioned that is his 8th completed pass in his career.
Cousins sacked. Ndamukong Suh. Of all the guys, it's the rookie John Franklin Myers who knocks it out of Cousins' right hand.
Todd Gurley, 20, 10, Gurley for MVP. Touchdown LA.
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast. I'm your host, Jake Ellenbogen. This is episode 170 of the podcast. I'm joined here with Alexis Kraft, and we are going to have Kentucky cornerback, who you just saw at the Combine, and we'll be talking a lot about the Combine, Derrick Baity. He joins the show later on. Actually, you know what? We'll just throw it right to him, Alexis, and then we'll give our Combine thoughts. We'll give him the nod. So, without further ado, I guess here is Derrick Baity. All right, guys, joining the show, Kentucky cornerback Derrick Baity. How's it going, man? Thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. Everything good on my end. I'm just excited to be a part of the process.
Awesome. Yeah, we're really excited to talk to you. I'm sure that you're busy, but it means a lot to us for you to come on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And I guess just to get this thing rolling, we'll start from the very beginning. You know, at what age were you when you started playing football, and what made you want to play in the first place?
I believe I was 4 years old, and I started playing just, my mom just put me in it just to see like what I like to do as a kid. I was climbing trees, always playing outside, so why not put it to use? So I started playing football.
Oh, most definitely. And, obviously you had a liking for football. You had to have watched some NFL. Do you have a favorite player that you watched growing up?
My all-time favorite player, even though it wasn't my generation, but once I really understood football, my all-time favorite player was Deion Sanders.
I like it.
Good one. Yeah, definitely a good pick. And obviously ended up playing, your college football at the University of Kentucky. What made you choose Kentucky?
For me, choosing Kentucky, I just knew I wanted to get out of Florida, just try a different scenery. I knew I had a chance to play early at Kentucky. Like, they were on the turnpike. They wasn't the winning program yet, but they had potential. And just playing in the SEC, I knew for me to achieve my lifelong dream of becoming an NFL player, I knew I had to play at the highest level, and that was the SEC.
Yeah, Derrick, of course. And, I want to ask you, for incoming recruits, and there are a lot of them, the 2019 class, the 2020 class, 2021 class, and, so forth. Anyone that's considering Kentucky, what would be your pitch to come on over and make this your place where you decide to play your college football?
I'll give the same advice to anyone because I don't want to be the one to dictate someone's future. But I'll say for any prospect choosing a college, make sure you're choosing the college because that's what you wanted to do, not being influenced by anyone. But, work hard at it. Do stuff when people not looking. Like when the camera's not on you, always work hard at it. And everything's going to work out in your favor.
Yeah, and you obviously had a lot of great games and moments playing for Kentucky, but do you have a favorite game or moment?
I have to say my favorite game in Kentucky came. Well, I have two. I definitely got to mention the Florida game where we just ended the streak. Man, that's just something that was unreal. But my favorite game for me as a player was South Carolina in 2017.
I like it. And what about South Carolina in 2017 really, stood out to you?
What's funny is it was scary. I mean, first play of the game, I was guarding Deebo Samuel, and he ran a slant for like 60 yards and scored on me. So, I mean, that's the first play of the game, so the place is rocking. They got that rooster or whatever game caught, just the whole stadium just doing that noise, and I got to come back on the field and guard him. So me and him, after that play, we went at it all day, and I ended up getting, like, some good stops and interception to seal the game and end up winning SEC Player of the Week. And, I mean, I think that just stood out and showed a lot about who I am and my character.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned Deebo Samuel. He's obviously probably an incredibly tough guy to play against. Who would you say is the toughest opponent that you played during your time in college?
During my time in college, I mean, they all were great, but I'll definitely have to say Antonio Callaway from Florida, Calvin Ridley at Alabama, and I got to say Deebo Samuel.
And putting you on the spot here, out of the three, what would you say, was the most difficult matchup?
I'll say with Antonio, he was just an all-around great receiver. He was tough, fast, ran great routes, and he had for sure hands. Like no matter how the pass was coming, he was going to give like 120% effort to go catch it, and most likely he was catching it. And I think that's what kind of separated him from the other two, which were still great receivers, but that's what separated him. He was an all-around great receiver.
Yeah, definitely. And he's a guy who is, not only impressed them, but he's, been impressing with his skills in the NFL as well. So definitely makes sense that he'd be a guy that was tough to go up against. But, not only, we're talking about guys who you went up against being tough, but you played with some really talented players, Josh Allen, CJ Conrad, Benny Snell, Darius West, Lonnie Johnson Jr. I mean, what was it like to play with guys of their talent, and, what do they bring to the table?
I think it was fun, just getting to know them as guys. You always go to a team and everybody's the best player coming out of their school, their state, or whatever. And, I mean, I think what was special about those guys, we all came in, and we weren't a winning program. And we all had the chip on our shoulder to turn everything around, and we all had to put our talents together and our heads together and, dictate our team. And I think that was a big part of our success this year.
Oh, without a doubt. And, you could tell it was kind of I won't say it's a culture change because, we weren't there. Maybe you would call it that, but, you're right. I mean, you guys really turned the ship around, and I don't remember the last time Kentucky was bad. So, yeah. That's really what it comes down to. And I actually, kind of a question that I have to ask you because, coming from a program like Kentucky, I mean, coming from like a school like Kentucky, a lot of people talk, college basketball. How was that whole process? Are you guys still, the hot shots on camp, no matter, on campus, no matter what? Like if you are, 15th in the country in football, does that kind of put you on the same playing field as, college basketball, or do people just go head over heels for all the, the basketball program?
I mean, you can definitely tell the difference between football and basketball prior to this year, but like once we like got everything rolling and we were like cracking top 10 and top 15 and everything. Like you couldn't tell the difference. I think we all just walked around and it was a different vibe with them, like the basketball team in general. Like at first you could tell like it was okay, football and basketball, they're separated. But once this year rolled around and everything was clicking on all cylinders, like the two teams, we came together, we were supporting each other. Not to say we weren't supporting each other, but like it was a different feel, and you change the environment and the culture, and everybody's winning. Yeah, I think we're on the same playing field as them.
Yeah, and something that I wanted to touch on as well is you got the opportunity to participate in the East-West Shrine Game this year. So just kind of tell us a little bit about that experience and what that was like, because obviously just watching the East-West Shrine Game, it seemed like it was such an incredible experience and probably really special to be a part of.
Yeah, I want to say about the East-West Shrine Game, for one, I mean, I definitely understand that it's bigger than football regardless of anything. Just the experience of meeting kids during the week who had those, problems in their lives, and just opens your eyes to show how grateful we are to play the game, and just know that people like that look up to you. So it's bigger than football. It always is. And just going against the guys and getting to meet the guys at the East-West was a different feel. It's like starting college all over again, playing with the best guys at the best schools, and, just you got to just like try not to get too caught up in the moment, but, that's what it is. Like, it's a special feeling.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. We've talked to guys from the Senior Bowl, East-West Shrine Game, the Tropical Bowl, the PA Bowl. All those college all-star games are pretty cool. Just kind of the idea of, you play on one team all year. Like for you play on Kentucky, and then, you have an opportunity to maybe play on the same team as, somebody you went up against. I think that's pretty cool. But with that being said, we asked you your toughest guy was that you played in college, but specifically kind of zeroing in on the not the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Game. Who would you say is the toughest player you went up against there?
It'll definitely be Terry Godwin out of Georgia.
Yeah, he's someone who impressed a lot of people, I think, at that game, and definitely looked like a guy who'd probably be tough to go up against for sure.
Yeah.
But, as a player, just watching you play, and from what I've seen, it seems that you have a lot of strengths, and that's a reason that, you're getting a lot of interest and are going to, end up, I think, balling out in the NFL. But what would you say is your biggest strength as a player?
My biggest strength as a player, my biggest strength, no matter what, is my IQ to the game. Like, I'm smart to the game. And I think that's what helps me, and that helps me be in great positions and helps me move fast during the game. But I'll definitely have to say from the NFL standpoint, my biggest strength is going to be my size. You don't have too many 6'3" corners, who can flip their hips and move how I move. So, just being a player, I know me being smart definitely helps my game. So that's my biggest strength.
Oh, yeah. Obviously, that's definitely – it's definitely rare to have that size and move, obviously with that, much fluid to your hips and everything. But, I have to ask you kind of the serious question. You have obviously your strengths. What's the one area you want to improve on?
The one area I want to continue to improve on is tackling. It's not common for a corner who wants to tackle. And, I made some big plays while hitting, but I also left some on the field when I didn't hit. So I want to just continue to improve my game at tackling and be more consistent with it. So, tackling.
Yeah, and, it's always, kind of cool to hear guys, a lot of guys talk about their strengths, but it's always interesting to know things that, players want to improve on and better themselves at. But, kind of going back to the NFL, who is one guy that you're really looking forward to going up against in the NFL? Like a receiver that you would just love to get the opportunity to go up against?
I mean, they all so great. But, I mean, to get your name out there to, like, test the waters, you got to go against the best at the game. So I can't wait to go against the Antonio Browns, the Odell Beckhams, and Julio. So, I mean, I think the biggest one I want to go against is Antonio Brown.
I like it. And obviously you're talking about, guys you want to, match up against, but there's also going to be, quarterback always throwing the football, and you're going to be the one, probably hauling that thing down. Who do you most want to pick off in the NFL?
Woo. I want to pick him off. It's Tom Brady. You pick off Tom Brady, you somebody. I'm going to keep that ball forever. That's my favorite quarterback regardless. So picking him off, I might go apologize right after, but I want to pick off Tom Brady.
Certainly would be, an accomplishment, and he's a guy who doesn't throw many picks, so I know that when he does, it's really exciting for whoever got the chance to pick him up. But, we got to ask, we ask this, and we're a Los Angeles Rams podcast. Have you talked with the Los Angeles Rams yet?
Yeah, I talked to the Rams. I talked to the Rams at East West. I think I just set up an informal with the Rams. I can't remember how many teams I set up with, and I think they were on that list. But, I'm just trying to soak in the process, enjoy it, and just, have fun with it.
Yeah, that's the way to be, and we're looking forward to watching you, and with that being said, who is Derrick Baity as a person, and who is he as a player?
Derrick Baity as a person, I mean, you getting for one, like as a person, you getting a man, like a man who stand on principles. I made my mistakes as a young man. I had to grow up early, but through it all, like I learned life. So like you getting this goofy kid, someone you can bring around anyone, bring them to any crowd, everyone's drawn to. You getting a smart, witty kid, but as a player, you getting a playmaker. You getting a shutdown corner, someone who to eliminate in the 11th on the field. It's an 11-man game, but with him at corner, you're gonna have to play with 10 because he's gonna lock your receiver down.
Yeah, definitely. And you seem like a really great guy, and you're a guy that we have had fun watching and had fun analyzing, and we're really excited to talk to you. And no matter where you end up, whether you end up a LA Ram or somewhere else, we're fans for life, and we'll be following you for sure.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Hey, you take care, Derrick. Thank you so much for your time. Stay healthy, and let's keep in touch.
For sure. Y'all have a great day.
You too.
You too. Thanks, Derrick.
All right, guys. So that was Derrick Baity. Hope you guys enjoyed. We had a lot of fun interviewing him, as we always do, interviewing everybody that comes on here. Yeah, now we have the Combine. And
Combine time.
It's there's a lot to get through. I suggest we kind of go day by day. I don't know about you, but
That's
like
fine.
day 1, day 2, yeah. So let's just do that. Alexis, I've been talking a lot, so please relieve me of my vocal duties.
Okay, well, to kick things off, day 1 obviously was the offensive line and running backs. I'm going to go with, just who stood out to me, or I should say surprised me the most on day 1 was Garrett Bradbury, the offensive lineman from North Carolina State. And now Bradbury is a guy who I had graded as a first round. Okay. It's, I have considered him someone who is going to go in the first round, probably a late first round, is my assumption. But I mean, he really did better than I thought he was going to do. I mean, he ran a 4.92 40-yard dash. When you watched him in the drills, he had incredible balance and body control. Not the biggest guy out there, but definitely a guy who I have no doubt, after watching the performance he put on at the Combine, is going to start day 1 and really help out whatever team drafts him.
Yeah, I kind of aligned with that as well. I think Garrett Bradbury really made himself a lot of money. I've been a really big Elgton Jenkins fan, and Bradbury's kind of given him a run for his money, in my opinion. I was really impressed with the way he looked, just going back and watching the drills, since, of course, I happen to be working on day one of the combine, and I wish I was there. But either way, went back and I watched it, and I was really impressed with Bradbury. I was also impressed with our guy Reisner.
Yep.
I thought, Dalton, his game is not going to be the 40-yard dash. He's not going to blow anybody away, with straight line speed. And he really doesn't need to, because you see the short area burst in, obviously getting to the second level, flattening guys like pancakes. I mean, it's really, he doesn't have an issue doing that. I thought he did really well with the mirror drill. I thought he mirrored extremely well, which shows off his foot speed, his foot quickness, and, his overall ankle flexion. And I was just really impressed with, what he did at Indy. But, really, it didn't shock me.
Right. I mean, we been new about our guy Reisner.
Oh, yeah.
Or Reisner. Sorry. We know, now everyone else knows. But, he by far was one of the top guys out of that offensive line class at the combine.
Yeah, and then who would be your next guy to talk about? I guess we'll go back to back, all that.
Well, I was going to say Reisner, but you just talked about him. I guess if we're talking offensive linemen, because that day one was offensive linemen and running backs. Well, okay, so I'm actually going to do a running back, because this is a guy who I had graded as a low third round pick and now have graded as probably a late second, early third round pick, is Justice Hill out of Oklahoma State, which sounds a little bit crazy because I know a lot of people liked him a lot before the combine, and I'll be the first to admit he's not a guy that I watched a ton of for whatever reason. I didn't, and I just, from what I had seen briefly of him, it was just kind of like, oh, he's okay. I had a late third round, maybe early fourth round grade on him. But I mean, did you see that 40 that he ran?
Oh yeah. I was a 4.4 flat. I mean,
yeah, I mean,
really,
crazy.
Yeah. He's on my radar now for sure.
Right. Like, he definitely has put himself, he was a guy who was not on my radar. That's a good way to put it. And now he is, for sure. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, I guess sticking with the running backs, I'm going to go with Miles Sanders. Look, this is somebody that I get, he has big shoes to fill. It kind of goes hand in hand, in college, you come out of, the same place as the Saquon Barkley and you'll get a little overrated, but you'll also feel kind of that pressure. Like, you're not Saquon Barkley, you're kind of, you're not as good and all that. And I thought, Miles Sanders did a fine job coming out and really showing what he's all about. I thought he was going to run a 4.6 straight up, and he ended up running a 4.49, I believe. So I was really impressed with his straight line speed. And then, of course, in the agility drills, just showcasing his change of direction. I just think he's, obviously, I think the thing that was most impressive is how well he was able to catch the football. And that's something, I got to say, Penn State, they're great every year. But one thing that I find very valuable about the running backs, they aren't used often. I mean, Saquon Barkley would have games where he had 12 carries. So Miles Sanders wasn't really used. So there's a lot of tread on his tires. So I think, if even if you're a Rams fan, like, or I think anybody should be interested in him. But, with the recent, news about Todd Gurley and, the potential of not bringing back Malcolm Brown or CJ Anderson, and, of course, John Kelly, he flashed in preseason. But, I mean, if you're looking for a guy that can, kind of come in and be, in that backfield, I think Miles Sanders is an interesting one there. I mean, he might be a little earlier of a pick now. I mean, you might be talking third round, and I kind of looked at him fifth or sixth.
Yeah, before the combine, I had him as a fourth or fifth round guy. I think now he's definitely going to go sometime in the third, probably the early third, honestly. So, that as you mentioned, he might not be there by the time the Rams pick at the end of the third, assuming that they don't trade up or anything. So it's certainly something to watch. I'm not quite sure. There's a lot to process lately with the whole Rams running back situation because, we got all the news about, potentially all the stuff going on with Todd Gurley and, CJ and Malcolm. So it's something to think about for sure. But, like I said, I don't think that, after his performance at the Combine, he's going to be available at the end of the third.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think, if we're talking about another running back, that would be an interesting one and really stood out to me. I think you have to give it to Raquel Armstead at Temple. I mean, This is somebody that, I penciled in as, in my mind, I thought he was the best running back at the Senior Bowl. I really liked Bruce Anderson out of North Dakota State, but I really was impressed with what Raquel Armstead put on tape. This is somebody that runs through arm tackles. He looks small, but he runs with power. He's got pop to his pads, but he moves extremely well. And this, this is somebody that I think is definitely going to have a role at the next level. To me, I was really impressed. I mean, he ended up running, kind of a mid 4.4, which I wasn't expecting. I felt like he was more of a quicker than fast guy, but he does kind of, move away on film. When he, sees a crease, he has, that breakaway speed. So I kind of felt like, he would run like a 4.5. But he was a lot faster than I expected. And of course, his drills were just as good as I expected. I think really his only issue is catching the ball out of the backfield. Not that he can't do that. He just wasn't really utilized as a pass catcher, and that's something that I think, really Temple coaching staff, that's on them because, you want to make things, a lot easier for your quarterback. And I think their quarterback struggled quite a bit when I was watching the film of him. So, I think obviously they missed an opportunity and they really should have used him more in the past, the passing game. And, I guess that's something that he'll just have to develop in the NFL, but a lot to like there.
For sure. And I'll be quite honest with you. I did not know who he was until the Combine. I know that sounds terrible, but he's a guy that I had never watched anything on. I hadn't watched much Temple. The only Temple that I'd watched, I was watching the Temple defense because of our guy, Michael Dogby. I wasn't looking at the Temple offense at all. And my mistake, because he impressed me and definitely, made a name for himself after the Combine for sure.
No, I definitely hear you there. And, I think these running backs are definitely interesting this year. I compare, somebody like Armstead, he's kind of interesting to me. I like him. You remember when Stephen Ridley actually used to be good? That's how I compare him. I think he's that type of player. Before Stephen Ridley started to fumble like crazy and got benched, he was a 1,000-yard receiver in New England. And, that's kind of what I see out of Armstead. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being a Patriot. I mean, those are the type of guys that they draft and, they stockpile running backs, but I think he'd make a lot of sense for really any team. I mean, you can find a role for anybody like that. So
he kind of reminds me in a weird way, and I don't think he's as big as this guy is physically, but like of a Derrick Henry. You don't think so?
Well,
that's what I thought of watching him.
He's
like a smaller, faster. I don't maybe not. Yeah, faster.
He's just a deceptive player. He looks kind of. Well, he looks small, but then he runs guys over.
Right.
And it's impressive. I mean, that's something that Ridley would finish runs. He was actually a model running back when he was a starter. I mean, he was really good. Mm-hmm. And he hit a wall. I mean, it's a confidence issue though. If you can't stop fumbling the football, it's just going to pile on. But is there anybody else that you want to mention for day one or?
Not from day one. I mean, there was a lot of, don't get me wrong, incredible talent day one. But as far as what shocked me, not much on day one that really surprised me.
Well, and then what was one of our guys day one?
Oh, yeah. I actually do have this
something insane.
And thank you for bringing this up because I totally just skipped over that. and I did want to bring that up. Our boy, Joshua Miles from Morgan State, was out to impress, was he not?
I mean, he had a 36-inch vertical, and he's an offensive lineman. Wow.
I mean, we knew this guy was incredible, but never would have predicted that.
No, that's rare. I mean, and shout out to guys like Caleb McGarry and Trey Pipkins as well. I mean, they jumped well. 33.5, I believe they both had, but Joshua Miles with the 36.
This is a good segue into my day two, because the guy that impressed me, one of the guys that impressed me most on day two was none other than my Mizzou boy, Emmanuel Hall. And
yeah, he impressed me as well.
And I do not have the notes in front of me for what he jumped, but his vertical, what was it again? Was it like,
I think it was like 43.
That's, yeah, because I know Metcalf was 40.5. So
but then he tied the second highest broad jump in recorded history.
Yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, Emmanuel is someone who I have watched a lot. Obviously, Mizzou games are on all the time here. I live in St. Louis, and always thought he was a great player. But I had him. I'll be honest, I had him as probably a fourth rounder, late, okay, maybe fifth, early fifth. Just because I think that this wide receiver class is insane. But I'm telling you what, I'm not going to be shocked if Emmanuel goes at the beginning of the third round. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, that'll be an interesting one for sure. He was supposed to be at the Senior Bowl, and I think if he was, I didn't notice him, but I'm pretty sure he dropped out due to injury or something. I could be wrong. I might be confusing him with another guy, but yeah, like he and Miles Boykin, another guy that you like, I mean, they were freaks of nature. And I think really the key is, when you pair the size and the speed, I mean, you saw that one kid who's from this like unheard of program, who's 5'9", and you're thinking, oh, this guy's going to blaze. Like he's going to run like a 4.2. And he runs a 4.7 as a receiver. Like you can't be like the way like everyone views height today, you can't be slow and be short. Like when you're tall, you can be a little slow, but when you see tall guys running like the way Miles Boykin did, now you're talking. And so I think those two guys definitely deserve a mention. I'm glad you started off with Emmanuel, but I'd honestly say Paris Campbell, and this is somebody, if going back to our live mock draft, I kind of I won't say I bashed you. I'm not going to be a Ja'Kai polite, but I kind of didn't agree with your pick of Paris Campbell in the second round. I believe you had him in the Eagles. I don't remember exactly who you had him to.
Yeah, I had him to the Eagles.
Wow, I have good memory. But I mean, like, I just didn't see it. I felt like he was more of a gadget guy. I wasn't really a huge Curtis Samuel fan, so that's probably why. But you saw him, how comfortable he is, doing the drills out there, running those routes and running them, fluidly, not really dipping any bit in the speed department. I mean, he runs a 4.3, and he was awesome in the gauntlet. He was awesome in the deep ball tracking. I mean, this guy's going to be a player in this league. And I mean, he really put me on notice because I beforehand was kind of like, yeah, but he was really just a gadget guy. Like, he wasn't, the Ohio State receiver I normally like, because I like the Mike Thomases that don't really run that well, but like they're extremely technical off the line of scrimmage. I don't really like the Curtis Samuels of the whole of Ohio State. So that was my, crutch, but I was wrong. I'm not going to lie. Paris Campbell,
yeah,
he looks good. And Terry McLaurin as well. I mean, had a phenomenal Senior Bowl, stole the show. Him and Deebo Samuel did. And then Terry McLaurin goes out and he runs in the 4.3s, I believe. I mean, like, insane.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, Campbell's a guy who I've liked for a long time, and wasn't surprised by his combine at all. But McLaurin definitely is a guy who's rising up the ranks. I mean, I think he helped himself, like you said, in the Senior Bowl. Was incredible. Came out, had a great combine, and probably jumped an entire round. Is my assumption. A guy who you touched on who impressed me was Miles Boykin. And I'm not just, and here I go with my Mizzou and my Notre Dame guys, but it's true. Like you said, I mean, really, again, I like Miles. I watch Miles, every Saturday during football season, college football. And it's not that I didn't expect him to have a good combine, but I didn't expect him to have the combine he had. Miles is a guy who I actually probably now after the combine think has probably worked his way into the third or fourth round. Yeah. But, who knows?
Exactly. And there are other guys. I mean, it wasn't just those guys. I mean, Johnny Dixon ran a 4.4 also from Ohio State. Gary Jennings is somebody that I thought showed out at the Senior Bowl as well. And, he runs a nice 4.42. Friend of the podcast, of course, Alex Wesley. He ran in the 4.4s as well. Jazz Ferguson, Jalen Ferguson's brother. He ran a 4.4 at an incredible size. And, obviously you gotta talk about the two Ole Miss guys that I think really, as great as all those guys that we mentioned were, the two Ole Miss guys stole the show for me. DK Metcalf. Yep. And A.J. Brown. And A.J. Brown, he struggled on the first 40. Like, he stumbled out of the gate. His second 40 put him in the 4.4s. So I really like A.J. Brown for sure. But,
I do too. Yeah. And both DK and A.J. are guys who I have had first-round grades on for a very long time. Obviously, DK is kind of jumping up. He went from a guy who I thought would be a mid first rounder who now I think is going to go top 10. And, I'm hearing some concerns though about DK weirdly, because he did great in the 40-yard dash and the leap and all that stuff. But, and you might know this, didn't he have crazy bad times and the cone drill and the shuttle run and all that?
Yeah, but I mean,
I don't think it matters, but
exactly.
But I know that that's it. I mean, it is odd to do so well in everything else, and then completely bomb in something else. I mean, but I don't.
Oh, it absolutely is.
I don't think it's going to affect him, at all.
But I mean, it's also that when you put that much strength on, you put that much muscle. There's not a lot of flexibility. Your body doesn't bend. You don't have a normal body structure. So, part of the problem is with the cone drills, it's all about being bendy, being flexible. So it didn't shock me. It's something I prepared for. I mean, that you're not getting DK Metcalf to, catch screen passes and weave his way all over the field. You're getting him because he can basically eat up press. He can eat up off-man coverage. Okay? He stacks DBs like it's his job, because it is his job. His head fake is unbelievable. I mean, and he runs a 4.3 at, 220-something pounds, and he's 6'3". I mean, he has the neck injury and the lack of production, but, I mean, I don't know how many times I have to say this. It doesn't matter how highly productive you were in college. At the end of the day, how are you going to, move over to the NFL? Are you coachable? I mean, a lot of these guys didn't get an opportunity to play in college due to, crazy circumstances like ineligibility, off the field issues, injuries, coaching, feuds, all sorts of things. So I don't really care. I mean, I don't care that DK Metcalf never was a 1,000-yard receiver. I mean, you want to tell me if he stays fully healthy throughout an NFL season, he's not going to get to 1,000 yards his rookie year? I wouldn't agree with you at all. So, I thought he really stole the show. And then A.J. Brown is somebody, look, he's not going to be as dynamic as Metcalf, but he's going to dominate the slot. I think he's very similar to Antonio Brown in a sense. Just the way he's able to kind of, basically find the soft area of the zone and just really be that security blanket for quarterbacks. And, he's somebody, I think he's a great route runner. He's got strong hands, going to be your possession guy. I think he can catch, passes over the middle, can take that contact, absorb it. And I think he's a rack monster. The part of being, a really good run after the catch guy is having, the right, mindset and having the right mechanics. So if you put yourself in a proper position, you've already set yourself up to gain 15 yards after the catch.
Mm-hmm.
It's about kind of, deceiving the defender. So if you deceive the defender, have them thinking you're going this way and you go the other way, that's also another thing. But you kind of have to turn your body uphill. And it's not easy, but, that's why there's, a handful of guys that are really good. That's why, like, Jarvis Landry, who ran a 4.7 at the combine, like, he's still able to wiggle his way past guys because he's got great mechanical, aspects of his game where he can eat up yards, as a rack monster. And that's something I think AJ Green is really going to, dial it down and really be a stud at. But, looking at the tight ends, there are a lot of really good tight ends in this class. And before we talk about the Iowa guys, because, we're going to talk about the Iowa guys, your tight end one is from Iowa. My tight end one is from Iowa. Different players, I imagine. So, we got to talk about Irv Smith because I've never seen a more fluid, a more perfect rep in the gauntlet than what Irv Smith put on. He was unbelievable in that. No wasted motion. Attack the football, high point. He had to high point a ball. He's got some great hands. He's so fluid in his movement, and I think this is somebody that kind of could shoot himself in the first round now.
Well, before this coming season, well into last season's college football season, I should clarify. I had Irv Smith as my number one tight end. Now, like you mentioned, I have Noah Fant as my number one tight end. But I think, for me, TJ's 2, and then you've got Irv as a close third. He's a guy, I think, he's going to start right away. I don't think it's going to be hard for him to adapt to NFL, game speed and all that stuff. He's a big guy. And I think he's impressive. I don't think anybody watches him play and it has question marks around him. I don't see what they could be.
Yeah, I think, well, the funny thing about the draft is you see your guys, right? You pick your guys before the season. So, everyone falls in love with Ken, like, for instance, Ken Webster, the cornerback out of Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
He had, like, serious first round, but early first round, everyone thought he was going to be an early first round pick. Another one out of Ole Miss. I'm not just picking on Ole Miss guys, but Greg Little,
right?
And now he's nowhere near a first round pick. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with like Orlando Brown, in the past. With Oklahoma, he ended up having an awful combine. He's been a pretty solid pro after his rookie year. But this is somebody that was considered a first-round pick. And, there are guys, it's going to happen. Paris Campbell, I remember him being mocked to the Rams in a way too early mock draft, for this year. So, I think it kind of, things change. And really your opinion, I know people like to bash, others for changing their mind. I was always told, because like when I did the scouting academy, I was told a lot, but I was always told that just because you change your opinion doesn't mean that you're necessarily, you're selling out.
Mm-hmm.
You've gained more information about a particular topic or a particular player or whatever, and you've decided because now the new information that you've learned, this is why this has to be this way. And so, like, I would say that, about somebody like Dawson Knox, who wasn't even on my radar coming into the year. I think Dawson Knox, based on what I've seen, and he had a really good day at the combine. Didn't run the 40 time because he actually had a hernia surgery that he had done. I mean, I know he did the drills, so that's a little like, why did he do the drills and not the run the 40? But either way, this is somebody that is definitely going to be a problem in the NFL. He can really stretch the field. He looked great on the wheel route. But he's gonna be a seam buster for sure for a team. And keep in mind, this guy was on the same team as the guys that we mentioned and we didn't mention. So he's just he was behind AJ Brown as far as priority of a target. He was behind DK Metcalf, and let's not forget, we didn't mention him because he didn't have that great of a day, but his tape is phenomenal. DeMarcus Lodge.
Mm-hmm.
So he's behind those three guys. Dawson Knox, I think, is one of those guys that is going to show out in the NFL and be a lot better of a pro than he was in college. And once again, we talked about it, goes back to playing time. And he just didn't get the playing time that, he deserved. And sometimes that's how it works. But I was really impressed with his on-field drills, as well as Foster Moreau, who ran a great 40 time for LSU, from LSU. And Jay Sternberger, former JUCO guy, transferred to Kansas and then transferred from Kansas due to lack of playing time, like we mentioned with Dawson, to Texas A&M. So, I'm familiar with Jay Sternberger. He's somebody that I liked at KU. That was a huge get, and I totally understood him leaving. I mean, they just don't throw to tight ends enough, and they've had some really good tight ends. So, Jace comes into the combine, very fluid athlete, and I thought he was great in the deep ball drill, tracking the ball, and he's going to be somebody. He's still a little raw, but he could be really good for a long time in this league.
I agree. And another guy who really stood out to me, and forgive me if I butcher this, was Kahale Warring. I don't know if I said that. I think I said that right. He's from a school, and God, I wrote it down. I didn't write what school he's from. See that, but that, hold on.
No, now I want to know who this is, because it's not even what position.
Tight end, San Diego State. That's what it was. Okay, I knew it was something.
Okay.
Yeah, he, is a guy who, again, I didn't really ever watch anything of him, and saw him go in there, and I thought he did fantastic with all the drills. I'm pretty sure he ran a 4.7 or a 4.8, and
he ran a 4.6, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, he was insane, and he had great hands, and really impressed. Just another example of a guy who I think helped his draft stock by going out there and competing.
Yeah, and once again, going out there and competing.
Which we've,
as far as the quarterbacks, and this is kind of sad because I hate to see, Kyler Murray was really the biggest winner this week, because all he did is he went to the combine, he measured, and Kyler Murray's my quarterback one, so I'm not trashing him, but all he did was measure, and obviously he put on weight that he's not going to play at. He'll be different as pro day, and that's how it's going to work. But it was all for show. And he leaves the combine as, likely the number one overall pick, and he didn't have to move a finger. So, I think with that, again, it's not to trash him. It's just kind of watching these other guys. I was hoping that someone was going to stand out. And even, I thought the best quarterback was probably Haskins. But even he wasn't, no one just going back and watching. And this is what I do, because I want to see, where are these guys compared to a Goff and a Wentz, or in the past maybe a Stafford or somebody in those drills, and you just don't see the pop. You don't see the zip coming off their hand, off their wrist. Mm-hmm. You don't see the ball zip the way it did with Goff and Wentz, and you just don't see the confidence, throwing with anticipation. One guy that I like in this draft, Jordan Ta'amu, who was throwing to all those Ole Miss guys. He's good. I like him. He's mobile. He kind of reminds me a little bit of the guy that I liked in the draft coming out of UCLA, Brett Hundley. But they kept bringing it up on the broadcast. He throws to where guys are, not where guys are going to be. And that's my biggest issue, in this draft. There are not many guys that throw with anticipation.
Mm-hmm.
And Dwayne Haskins does. It's just I didn't see he wasn't great. He didn't wow me. He was just solid. And I look at, guys like, Brett Ripien, disappointing. I expected more out of him. I mean, he's way higher on my board, and I won't drop him because of, a workout without pads on and without live bullets. But, I think really guys that operate well in this type of, environment, because they don't have to, make, tough reads, and they don't have to make tough decisions, and they don't have live bullets come at them. Ryan Finley, a 6-year senior, and Jarrett Stidham. Stidham is great until you pressure him, and so I thought those guys did extremely well, because they can be accurate when no one is coming at them. But, Drew Lock, I'll say he ran faster than I expected at a 4.6. Nick Fitzgerald, I kind of forgot about. Just he's fast. I don't know how much he offers as a quarterback. I thought Gardner Minshew had a good day. But no one blew me away is what I'm saying. Really, Tyree Jackson and Trace McSorley, I interviewed both of them. I knew Trace was fast. So when he ran a 4.5, wasn't shocked. Tyree, I expected to run a 4.7. And, he just looks faster than a 4.7. I don't know. I expected that. When he ran a 4.59, I was like, wow. I mean, he's fast. I mean, he's a Cam Newton type of, athlete. So,
right.
That's just kind of how I look at it like that. But, I think, Trace McSorley could be looking at a position switch. I wouldn't mind, picking him up and using him. I've said this over and over again, like a Taysom Hill. I didn't think anyone blew me away, but you could definitely use this quarterback class. It's just not a quarterback class where if you're looking for, the next big thing at the position, probably the only one that I saw was the guy that didn't throw, and Kyler Murray.
Well, I think, and this is not just me saying this because I've been hearing other people say this as well. There's a potential that Drew Lock surpassed Haskins. And it's not the most popular opinion, but if you go and look at what people are saying about the winners of the combine, Drew Lock is on a lot of those lists. And he's probably a very specific type of quarterback that I think, an example is the Broncos, which I don't think are going to take I don't know if they're going to take a quarterback or not. I think if they do, they got to get rid of Keenum. But, I wouldn't be shocked to see Locke go before Haskins. And that's not me being biased. That's just me saying what everyone else is saying or what a lot of people are saying. But as far as quarterbacks go, nothing surprised me much, honestly. It's a bummer because I like to watch the quarterbacks, but everything that I saw was kind of what I expected. So I guess that's all day 2, right? We covered that. Tight end, receiver.
Yeah, we covered that pretty in depth. Day 3 and day 4, I mean, this is the meat of the draft, the meat and potatoes of the draft. I mean, we got a great receiver group. Not a lot of guys ran, not a lot of guys participated. So, you were missing out on the J.J. Arcega-Whitesides of the world. But day 3 and day 4, edge, linebacker, defensive line, cornerback, and safety. I mean, there are guys all over the board. And there are guys that stood out that, I mean, I didn't really have on my radar, period. So
who's your number one guy?
Out of all the defense?
Or out of day 3, who stood out to you most?
Okay, well, so the number one guy in my, on my board is Quinnen Williams, and I thought he was very good. But, the guy that stood out to me the most was probably Blake Cashman. Because, I had him on my radar, but I hadn't really dove into his film yet. And I was just blown away by his athleticism. He did a really nice job in the wave drill that whole when you have the pads and you have to touch the pads and then you have to kind of backpedal through the pads. I mean that's ridiculous. That's a lot of it's hard to do that, and and then being able to flip his hips, and he just looked so natural as a mover, and then obviously he's just somebody that I think really broke onto the scene. I mean, while everyone was talking about the two Devins, Devin White and Devin Bush, who rightfully so, they were great as well. Blake Cashman wasn't talked about at all before this combine, and he changed that pretty quickly. And I think he's going to have an opportunity to really shoot himself high up this board. And I mean, I wouldn't be surprised after all my grades are in if he ends up as a top 60 player. But that's kind of how I see it. And then of course defensive line. I mean, you talk about Colin Saunders, our guy Colin, Saunders just moves so well at his weight. And obviously we knew this. I mean, he can do a backflip. So, he went through those drills with ease and I was really impressed. But, Colin Saunders, Quinnen Williams obviously looked really good out of the defensive line guys. Dexter Lawrence ran very well for being 340 something pounds. That was very impressive on his part. So, those are, just some guys that I thought really stood out, for defensive line. Although I mentioned I had to start it off with Blake Cashman. But, really, I think there was so much to watch, on Sunday. I mean, Saturday was fun. The skill position players, big names. I get that, whatever. Pretty much offensive players are going to always hog the attention. But the defense in this draft, I mean, there's something else. I mean, you talk about Rashawn Gary running a 4.58, which is just insane. I mean, at 277 pounds, Rashawn Gary runs a 4.58. And then, Brian Burns and Montez Sweat, here's the thing with Brian Burns, he's going to get a little underrated because except for somebody like Kyle Krabs, who has him as a top 5 player and the number 1 edge guy in the class. But Brian Burns is somebody that I think is going to get underrated because Montez Sweat is going to kind of, rule the roost with the 4.41. But I look at, that time that Brian Burns put out there, 4.53, and then I look at his 10-yard split, and then I look at his on-field drills and how fluid he was, and just he's just unbelievable. Brian Burns has a chance to go before Josh Allen, before Montez Sweat. I mean, it just takes one team to fall in love, and I expect NFL evaluators to be less about the hype, the general hype, and I think Brian Burns is good enough to go in the top 5 for sure.
Well, I agree with you, but I want to go touch on something. You mentioned Gary and Sweat, right?
Yeah.
I just want to say that for a very long time, I have been shoving Rashawn Gary down everybody's throats. I've been pounding the table for Rashawn Gary. I have been obnoxious about Rashawn Gary. And what do you know? Shocker. Everyone finally is understanding what I'm talking about. And the same thing. And now Montez Sweat is a guy it wasn't that bold of me to be, talking about him so much. But another guy who I was completely talking about and taking in all my mock drafts for the Rams and, Twitter mock drafts, etc. I mean, come on, guys. I need credit for this. Rashawn Gary is going to be a top 10 pick.
He is also, when you talk about Rashawn Gary, I mean, why do you know who he is? Well, probably because he was the number 1 recruit in his class coming out of high school. So it's not like anything is surprising for him. I knew he would test really well. I didn't think he'd run a 4.5, but Rashawn Gary's simply put a freak athlete. His issue was he just wasn't, I would say he just wasn't productive enough he didn't back up the hype per se. It was kind of like Jadeveon Clowney. You were kind of not necessarily like Clowney because Clowney was more productive, but you were still, Clowney went number 1 overall, and you still had, problems with his tape. Like you were just asking for more, and remember the whole narrative that came up. He didn't, he took plays off, I mean, I saw that come up a little bit with Gary. So, I think that's probably why, but I definitely see what you're saying. And, I think I do want to go back to the defensive line. Tristan Hill,
Yep.
defensive lineman out of UCF, is somebody that, I really had my eye on before this combine. I was lucky enough to find his tape beforehand, and he only started once at UCF. But, I mean, Scott Frost, the former coach there, I mean, he literally called him the best player on the team. So that's a coaching problem. He didn't play enough because of the coaches. I mean, he's one of the best, I think, one of the best defensive tackles in this draft, and just moves so well and could be a huge landing spot for the Rams. I mean, you talk about a space eater, but a guy that really just is so athletic. I think he could get it right in there and, be that pass rusher in the interior next to Donald and Franklin Myers or Brockers. Tristan Hill made himself a lot of money in Indy.
I'm going to be honest with you. Well, and with the world. I had Tristan Hill graded as a round 6 guy.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people had that,
sometimes round 7, because a lot of times I when I have free time, which is not often nowadays, I do 7-round mock drafts that, just predictions, and sometimes he'd fall to the 7th. And I think after watching him at the combine, he's probably a 4th or 5th round guy.
I would say 3rd.
Yeah, well, that wouldn't surprise me either. I was wrong, and a lot of people were wrong, and definitely was very impressed with him, and he had very little error. And a 5 flat 40 is good for a guy his size. I mean, that was impressive.
He kind of reminds me of Andrew Brown from Virginia.
Yeah.
But I think he's heavier, but I think he's just as athletic. What was I gonna say? Oh, where were you on the Tim Settle train? Were you on it, or were you never on it? Because, like, for me, I'll be honest, I never jumped on that.
Yeah, train. Not really. I mean, I was just kind of an onlooker to that situation. I didn't get involved.
But, like, Rams fans were like, "Oh my God, Tim Settle! If he's there in the 3rd," and then I'm pretty sure he went undrafted. I mean, Tristan Hill is he's not like a fad. Like, you need to jump on him right now. If you guys are listening to this podcast, I mean, you really should be writing these names down if you don't know them. That's why we're dropping them. But, Tristan Hill is definitely, just wanted to bring him up because, I mean, we talked about Williams, we talked about Colin, obviously. Dexter Lawrence running at 340 and running so well.
It was just, and this is just a side note, kind of, but I was especially giddy watching Wren and Saunders. I know you mentioned Colin.
Yeah, and like Wise, like, people need to realize Wise isn't going to test well. Well, Wise isn't going to test well at these things. He is a slow mover in long speed. Like, he doesn't have the long speed, but when you're talking about quick, you're talking about power, that is his game. And so, he's quick-footed, but he can win with power, and he's a force. He dominated the East-West Shrine game. People are already, taking him off their list of, players that they want the Rams to draft because he ran a 5.2. Like, you do realize a 40-yard time for a guy that's going to play defensive tackle, I mean, really isn't that huge of a deal. It's only good if, like seeing Dexter Lawrence be able to move like that, you're getting a freak athlete because he's 342 pounds. But, it's not necessarily, a done deal if somebody doesn't run well. So I did want to bring back that. But, yeah, I agree with you. Renell Wren and Colin did all those drills so well. And he was even doing the coverage drill, like, downfield. Like, when is he ever going to have to cover? I don't know. But, like, he's just so fun. Like, did you get a chance to watch him? I mean, they were limited, but he had snaps as a stand-up pass rusher. Oh, my God. Like, he's just
incredible.
Wow.
He's
So much
incredible.
fun. So much fun to watch.
And honestly, all the guys that we've interviewed, I enjoyed watching. It's been fun. Should we move on to day 4?
Well, we got to get more into the linebackers.
Oh, right, they were day 3. You're right. I don't know why.
Yeah, so like the defensive line, I think we nailed down. We talked about the top edge guys. The other edge guys you got to talk about, I think that people need to get on their minds is Ben Banogu. He had a great set of field work. I mean, he didn't run like super fast. I mean, 4.6 is kind of what I expected. He didn't blow me away at the 40 time, but like his field work was so good. And I was really impressed with somebody like Porter Gustin because I it's weird. And I just thought about this, Alexis. So I'm a Kansas fan and you like Mizzou and you like Notre Dame and I like USC.
Right.
But it's like two rivals. But anyway, I don't know. I just thought of that. But like Porter Gustin is somebody that I watched a lot at USC, and it's tough with him because he's so talented, but he can't stop getting hurt. So watching him healthy, the way he played, I mean, he had a really good combine, and he'd be an interesting look for the Rams. And I think another guy that's been mentioned in our podcast by people we've interviewed, Jordan Brailford, edge out of Oklahoma State. You mentioned him. I mean, he had the sick spin move, in the East-West Shrine game, got that sack on Brett Ripien. But, Jordan Brailford, somebody that's quickly rising up my board. Runs a 4.65. I really like him a lot. I thought he did well with the edge drills. This is just somebody that I think his tape is highly scrutinized because of, you watch the sacks he gets, and the production is all, Kansas games, 3 sacks against Kansas, and then, playing out of conference. I don't think that's fair, though, because I do think he is a productive player, and he went to the East-West Shrine game and proved that, competition is competition. He didn't falter. His play didn't falter when competition, rose to the occasion. And I think he's somebody that needs to be talked about more, in the 3rd or 4th round, and could be a huge bargain bin type of opportunity for the Rams.
Oh yeah, for sure. I like Brailford a lot. As you mentioned, I've talked about him. He's a guy that impressed me. Jamal Davis out of Akron, I believe, impressed me.
Oh yeah, he ran a 4.6.
Yeah,
that was insane.
It's insane. This edge class. You talk about the NFL, and the pass rusher position is the demand for that for a good pass rusher is at an all-time high. It's just the way the game is now, and this class is certainly a deep pass rush class, I believe. I think there's a lot of talented edge guys, because you look at the edge guys from the combine and everyone's blown away by how much talent there was. Well, guess what? There's a lot of talented edge guys that weren't at the combine. And so you got to think about that. And, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. And I think teams that are looking, the first round guys probably, probably stand out. But then I think as you get to the 2nd round, 3rd round, teams that are looking for, a pass rusher are going to have a lot of options, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Oh, most definitely. And I think this is, we didn't mention Wyatt Ray.
Oh yeah, another one of our guys
on our podcast. And, I thought he didn't have a great combine. Ran a 4.8. That's not his game. This is somebody that is just going to be a rusher. He's a simple edge rusher. When you talk about edge defender, they can do both things. If you want, a guy that's just going to be able to rush the passer, I think, somebody like Wyatt Ray, who was stuck. Keep this in mind. He was stuck behind Harold Landry, who was really high on my board. And I can imagine he was probably high on yours last year as well. He was stuck behind him for 2 years.
Right.
And then Zach Allen was on the other side getting, the reps. So, he's somebody pretty much got like 1 year to start, had a productive season. And, I'm excited for him because I think if the Rams are able to get him in the 4th or 5th round, they could get a really nice piece there, kind of throw in the rotation with guys like Okoronkwo and Trayvon Young. You could be looking at something, big
Right.
there, and that's really the key here. I mean, if you can't get your top rushers, I mean, a lot of these top, defensive players are going to be gone. So, I mean, like, if the Rams somehow end up with, Ja'Kai Polite sitting there at 31, I think, no brainer. I think you make the pick. But, if he doesn't fall, I would imagine a lot of these guys aren't going to fall. It's a bad sign. If Polite goes early, seeing, from what we're hearing that he's going to drop out of the first round, that's probably not a good sign for the Rams, who are probably going to be left with, in no man's land as far as getting, one of the top tier edge guys. And I just don't believe, when I saw those mock drafts of Sweat go in there, and I mean, you were able to get Sweat there, in our mock draft. I saw Brian Burns like 2-3 months ago. I mean, I didn't even understand that. So a lot of these guys are just going to be gone. And the Rams are going to have to go after, a Porter Gustin, a Jordan Brailford, a Jalen Ferguson, Wyatt Ray, Ben Banigou. I mean, like, they're going to have to go after those guys. And, I think this is a draft that you can get away with that. And I think another guy who really impressed me was Chase Winovich. I mean, I didn't think he was that fast. I didn't think he was that athletic, but, I was definitely surprised, and, kind of my fault. I haven't really watched a ton of Chase yet. Really just watched Michigan film, and, mainly for Devin Bush and of course Rashawn Gary. But I saw him. He definitely stood out. It just, I never got around to just zoning in on watching him. So that, there's that. And then, the linebackers, I mean, we talked about this on our Instagram live, the other night, and, Gary Johnson, Texas linebacker, Drew Tranquill, who just, we love Drew Tranquill. I mean, this dude, if he ends up a Ram, I mean, he kind of reminds me of Laurinaitis.
Yeah.
Not even going to lie. Like, he seems like that, like, nothing can bring me down type of player. I mean, my comparison wouldn't be Laurinaitis. It would be Alex Anzalone, because I think he's a better athlete. And I think they both kind of went through the same thing, with the injuries. I mean, quite, simply put, if Drew Tranquill stays healthy, he's going to be a really good linebacker in the NFL. It's just all about health.
Right.
And then, Ben Burke-Irvin is somebody that I like a lot out of Washington, and people keep saying he's too small to play linebacker. I don't even care. I mean, this guy has legit sideline to sideline speed, and I think he's going to be a force in the league. Whether he starts, day one or not, I don't really care. I mean, obviously his physical traits are there. I mean, he ran a 4.5, and I was really impressed with him. Obviously, the Devons we talked about earlier. Blake Cashman, and then Max Crosby from Eastern Michigan, who kind of just got on my radar because I had no idea who he was.
Yeah, Max is a guy who I had briefly watched and didn't watch enough to get a good read on him, but obviously he, balled out at the combine. As you mentioned, Drew Tranquill is a guy who I've watched a lot, obviously, being a Notre Dame fan, and who I really like. Tavon Coney and him are two great Notre Dame linebackers that I think are going to be successful in the NFL.
Yeah, Coney didn't run, but I thought he was good in the field
right.
drills.
I thought he was too, and yeah, the linebacking class is interesting because I feel like before the combine, I felt like there was like a top tier and then there was everybody else. But after watching the combine, I kind of think now it's a little bit more diversified and there's some good depth talent there as well. I didn't see anything that particularly shocked me from the linebackers other than Gary Johnson, as you mentioned, shocked me. Shocked everybody.
Wow. I wanted to see Voshon Joseph of Florida run. I was kind of annoyed. Trey Lamar probably did himself a favor not running. I don't think he's going to run well at all. Mac Wilson got hurt, so I know you were really bummed about that. And I was extremely irritated by Terrell Hanks, because he hit his, he hurt his hamstring while he was taking off, and you could see it. And so he runs a 4.98.
Yeah.
And now he's not a 4.9 linebacker. He plays like a 4.5 on film. So it'll be interesting at his pro day, but it's kind of frustrating if you were to go to the NFL.com records, it would say 4.98, and it just, I don't know. It seems brutal to kind of give him
it's
that.
a tough break.
And then I would also like to point out Cody Barton had himself a great day and kind of overshadowed his teammate that's getting more hype in Chase Hansen from Utah. I liked Barton more, and I like Barton more on film, and he's faster, and he actually ran the 40, and Chase Hansen sat out.
I believe Chase Hansen, isn't he a safety?
Well,
or did he run with the linebackers? I don't remember.
With the linebacker.
Okay,
yeah, he was with the
I couldn't
linebackers.
remember.
I mean, he might transfer to safety, but another two guys that I want, actually three. I want to see TJ Edwards run. He didn't run. I want to see Deshaun Davis run. He didn't run. And of course, I wanted to see Drake Greenlaw.
Yeah.
And those three guys didn't run. I don't expect Deshaun to blow the doors off. I actually don't think he's going to be extremely fast, but would have liked to see him. TJ Edwards is somebody I think running the 40 would have made a lot of sense. I mean, he kind of could have saw his stock rise. He in this linebacker class, it blows my mind that somebody like Khalil Hodge wasn't invited. I don't really understand that. I mean, he's had no off the field issues. I don't even get that, because I mean, the guys that were there, I mean, there was a Florida Atlantic guy there. I don't, Buffalo, I mean, I know it's not the most popular school, but come on.
It was surprising for sure, but I mean, I think he'll be fine. I don't think his stock will be affected by that, but it was a bummer. I would have liked to see him there.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely would have liked to, but I think that's going to wrap that up. I think the biggest winner of each position group in day 3, I would say Brian Burns at edge. I would say, I'm going to give this to Colin Saunders at defensive line, because Quentin Williams is the best player in the draft, in my opinion. So he couldn't have done anything to really, make me change that opinion. And, even if he was super great, I mean, he had a great day, but where is he going? Colin Saunders, I think, made himself some money, and he's already on a huge rise after the Senior Bowl. And then linebackers, as much as the Devons, stood out to me, I'm going with Blake Cashman. Blake Cashman's going to end up as a top 60 player, on my board. I think so. I think he's no joke, and I'm excited.
Yeah. You ready for day 4?
Yeah. Day 4, the day that I had to hurry up and watch before we recorded this, because I, of course, was at work, because, of course, the Combine has to go from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
Well,
of course,
I
Monday.
had to rewatch a lot of day 4 as well. And again, day 4 was a day for me that didn't really change my mind about a lot. Unfortunately, there wasn't anything that I saw that stood out to me a ton. I mean, I was impressed, obviously, by Greedy Williams, 40, but not shocked. If anybody surprised me at all, I thought Marvell Tell, the safety from USC, who I'm sure you're familiar with, did really well in all the drills. I thought he, helped his stock a lot. Jonathan Abram from Mississippi State did really well, I thought. Who else? A lot of people were giving my guy Julian Love flack. I thought he did fine. I think he's still a late first round, early second round guy. I don't know. What were your thoughts?
First off, Mark Fields just continues to dominate this process. And, all I keep hearing is that really his issue was the off the field stuff. Because there's no doubt. I mean, he's the best, one of the best cover corners in this draft. His field work was phenomenal. And then he goes out and runs a 4.3, and he was the best at the Senior Bowl. And it's that simple. I mean, if Mark Fields stays clean and, seeing with the, obviously the lack of reps in the draft, at Clemson, I mean, you could be looking at a 5th round guy that ends up being a superstar.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think you're right. I think the only thing that is deterring people from him is his off-field stuff. So if he can get it together, yeah, I mean, I think he's talented. I think he has the potential to be a starter.
Yeah, and then I want to throw out Isaiah Johnson, another guy that, had kind of an up and down Senior Bowl because he started off so great, and then at the end he kind of tailed off. But Isaiah Johnson, big 6'2", 6'3" guy, runs a 4.4. And he's also pretty fluid for his overall size out of Houston. So I thought that was it was a good day for him. It was a good day for Corey Ballantyne from Washburn. I know he's become kind of a meme. I know Washburn's become kind of a meme, but Ballantyne is somebody that has been on my radar since the Senior Bowl. I mean, we couldn't even figure out where Washburn was, but it didn't matter because, Corey Ballantyne is going to be that feisty corner that you can put on the outside or play, in the as a slot corner, and he's physical and just really scrappy. But he ran a 4.47, looked good in the the drills, and I like him a lot. I the biggest one I gotta say, aside from Mark Fields, Justin Lane, Michigan State. He is blowing it up. I think he is going to end up his stock. Like, I'm interested to see when everyone gets around to watching his film. He's a converted receiver. Okay. So he's like 6'3", converted receiver. And then he goes out and he runs a 4.5 at his, 6'3" size. So, I think that's impressive. More so because he's a converted receiver and he already has, the back pedal and, he can flip his hips and he just looks like a corner. He doesn't look like he ever converted over. So, it was a big day for him. And, Byron Murphy's another guy. He didn't run extremely well in the 40, but when you watch him on tape, that's not going to matter. He plays faster than his 4.55 time. But, Byron Murphy in the drills, he's as smooth and fluid as anybody. He's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then, there are other guys, but who else, stood out to you?
Well, the obvious for me, just watching, guys, like you mentioned, and Byron Murphy. Byron Murphy is my quarterback number one.
Same here.
And so I wasn't shocked by that. Grady Williams, as I mentioned earlier, wasn't shocked. There was nothing. And then Justin Lane's interesting because Justin Lane's a guy who I've liked kind of for a while, but he did impress me as well. He did better than I thought he would. I still think I have him as a 4th rounder. I could be wrong, but that's kind of where I have him at.
Every time.
What?
I mean,
I gotta just pull my Stephen Smith out and just say I could be wrong.
Oh my God.
But
stock down for this week. Stephen A. Smith. His take of what's his face? Haskins really blew up in his face this week.
I don't even see what he said. I haven't been really.
Well, no, he said that. That's where it came from. He was like, Haskins is. I think he's more mobile. It's like,
Haskins is not.
And then he comes out. And, oh my God.
But yeah, Corey Ballantyne I like as well. And he's a guy who I think is kind of a sleeper, and you've talked about him a lot. I think he's a sleeper. I think he's going to be taken a lot later than he should be, but I think he could start potentially one day in the NFL. I think he's that talented. But yeah, like I said, day 4 wasn't, nothing stood out to me as surprising. I think it kind of just confirmed a lot that we all kind of already knew. At least that's how I took it. There wasn't anybody that really blew me away that I wasn't expecting to already blow me away.
I guess David Long and then Darnell Savage running a 4.3.
Yeah, but I'm not surprised about Savage.
4.3? I didn't expect him.
Well, okay, the 4.3 is I thought he'd run very fast. I guess 4.3 is, yeah. That's surprising, but I thought, had it been like 4.5 or something, I wouldn't have been shocked. The dude is fast as hell.
Yeah, Amani Oruwariye, he needed this
Mhm.
day, and he really did a nice job. In the field drills, he ended up running a 4.47 at a really good height and weight. So I think he's somebody that made himself some money this week, money that he probably already had and then lost at the Senior
Mhm.
Bowl, because he was a disappointment at the Senior Bowl. But this is part of the process. You're going to have your up and down players, and Oruwariye to me is just he solidified himself as a second round player. This is a big body cornerback that is going to be able to run with the best of them. And he's going to take some time to develop, but when he fully develops, he has a chance to be really good. And I like guys like Hamp Cheevers. I thought they did a nice job. Rocky Sin. David Long from Michigan is really a guy that stood out to me. But the safeties, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I thought had a good time. I know people expect him to run faster. I don't see how 4.49 is anything to kind of complain about. But Amadi Hugo from the safety from Oregon, I thought was great in the on-field drills. Juan Thornhill was jumping out of the gym. And then Will Harris, a guy that I just love going back to the Senior Bowl, big 6'2" safety, and played college ball at the same college as John Johnson, and I think he'd be a really nice pairing with John Johnson, and I still feel like he's kind of getting overlooked. That might change because the guy that was rated higher than him, at Boston College was Lucas Dennis. More people knew who he was, but Will Harris, man, he's the real deal.
I agree.
Just moved so well for his size, and the 4.47 he runs. That was huge. And it was a bummer not seeing Nasir Adderley out there today, and Taylor Rapp didn't run, and I don't know. It's kind of that stuff kind of irked me, but the rest, that was pretty much day 4 for me in a nutshell.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree.
But
it's interesting because now we've got, pro days coming up and free agency starting next week, right? Yeah, starting next week.
Yeah.
And, it's for some the most stressful time of the year. For me, it's the most fun time. Well, it's fun until something happens I don't like, I should say that. And then I get bummed out.
Yeah, right.
But it's interesting, keeps you on your toes. There's a lot going on and moves will be made, some good, some bad. And, it's the way it goes. It's the name of the game.
Yeah, but, I think our guys, Montre Hardage, I don't think ran all that well, but I thought he had a good day, aside from that. And Derrick didn't run, Derrick Baity, the guy that you heard earlier, he didn't run the 40, but, he jumped a 30.5-inch vertical, and he had himself a pretty good day as well.
Sure.
So, I thought all those guys, stood out. That we mentioned, and then of course our friends of the podcast, and I think it was definitely a telling combine. Guys saw their stock plummet. Hopefully, obviously I'm not rooting against somebody like Ja'Kai Polite, but hopefully he fell far enough down the board so he's an option for the Rams. But
I'm telling you,
I think it was definitely a telling.
I'm telling you, he's
combine.
not going to fall that far. I'm not buying it. Everyone's like, "Oh, he's out of the first round." I'm not buying it.
It's just the problem is it just takes one team, and if you're a team that sees the Rams picking 31st, you had to watch them in the Super Bowl, represent your conference, or represent your only chance at watching the Patriots go down. And I guess in that case, if you're sitting there at 27. And the Rams' biggest need, or one of their biggest needs, is an edge, and you're talking about a top 10 player potentially in Ja'Kai, don't you just pick him to avoid the Rams from getting him? It's kind of like I could see that. It's kind of like why for the Texans. If you knew like the Rams were going to go after Jadeveon Clowney, wouldn't you just tag him, make sure that doesn't happen?
I don't know. I think that maybe.
And then now he's tagged, but their tag is you can negotiate, but you have to give up 2 first rounders if you sign him.
Yep. I mean, we'll see. It's going to get interesting, and I can't wait to just see what unfolds.
Yeah, and now really the only thing that's left are the pro days,
Mm-hmm.
and they kind of linger on, I think, until pretty late April, right?
I believe so. Yes.
So they're all scattered all over the place. It sucks. If I had more PTO, I'd try to go to a pro day around here, but there's not really many to go to in this area, and I have no PTO, so. And I'm sure the same would be for you.
Yeah, there's no pro days that I'm probably going to be hitting up anytime soon.
Unless our boy Dalton hooks you up.
Yeah, hey, if he just has to say the word, and I'll be there.
You'll be right.
I'll
in
drive up. It's not that far. I'm actually very close to Mizzou's pro day. Kind of quite thought about it. Not sure yet.
Ooh,
that'd be fun. See my boy Locke.
Yeah, I mean he's gonna go pretty high in this draft, so All right, well, I think that's gonna do it. I think we've covered the combine well. We had an interview with Kentucky cornerback Derrick Baity, and it's been fun. So it's we're glad we're going to get a podcast back out there. Feels like we haven't released one in a while, even though I think we just released one. But
so many interviews.
Who's counting? Yeah, and that's really what it is. So that's it for this episode for Jake Ellenbogen. And she is Alexis Kraft. This has been episode 170. And just be sure to follow Downtown Rams social media for some upcoming news and updates and all of that. We got some stuff on the horizon. So just keep your eyes peeled. All right. Later, guys. Attention all local business owners in the LA area. If you are looking to promote your business in any way associated with the Downtown Rams podcast, let us know. Give us an email at downtownrams@gmail.com or message us on any social media platform and we'll make something happen. Take care, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Until next time, horns up.